Who's that? Oh, is it? Behave yourself tonight, please. When's the last time we had to see
Hello and welcome everybody. I have pleasure in opening the annual general meeting of this 2024 at 7 o'clock, and I welcome everyone who is in attendance. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and to pay our respects to the elders past and present. Now, for those of you who have not been at one of these meetings before, I'll just explain the procedure and the purpose of this meeting. It's not a decision-making meeting. As such, matters may be tabled this evening, but council members are not required to vote. But of course, as electors, you can if you wish, but you're not required to vote. I'm the presiding member for the purpose of chairing the meeting. However, myself and council members are present, as I say, in their capacity as electors. Should council members choose to vote on a motion, it doesn't imply that the council members support or oppose the motion, because we will be considering them at a future council meeting. In my role as the presiding member, I'm here to maintain the order of the proceedings and ensure that there's respectful exchange of ideas and inclusive debate. And I'm going to run through the moving, seconding and voting procedures in more detail. We get to general business. I really want to thank those people who have turned up tonight, and thank you for taking such a keen interest in our council. I'm always pleased to see people who care so deeply about our community. I really do welcome your ideas and your recommendations and debate. And obviously, I'm very committed to being open and accountable as well. And this is part of that process. So thank you very much. We are recording and live streaming tonight's proceedings. So you'll be able to go back and view the proceedings at any point if you wish to. They will be there and available. Okay, so the first item we'll be dealing with tonight is item 3.1, which is the 2022-23 annual report, which includes the 2021-22 financial report. So at this point, I'm going to call for a mover and a seconder, and the purpose of that is not to say that you either agree with it or not, but to simply ensure that we can have some discussion and ask questions around the nature of the report. It's not like I say, it's also not binding or inferring that you have read the report or even agree with the document. So can I firstly see if we have a mover to deal with the annual report? Okay, so moved Councillor Hallett. Do we have a seconder? Okay, seconded Councillor Castle. Thank you very much. I'm now going to hand over for discussion to the CEO, who's going to talk about some of the key achievements and the administration elements within the report.
Thank you, Mayor Zaman. And for those who haven't read our annual report, I highly commend it to everyone. It is an absolute page turner. The purpose of the annual report is to cover the key achievements of the city, not just against our statutory obligations, which include the financial reporting element, which the CFO will speak to shortly, but also to track progress against council resolutions and council's key projects as adopted each year in the corporate business plan. You'll see the front cover of the annual report is our logo around the initiative of smoke-free town centres, which is well underway now, and a major element of our public health plan. Obviously, the annual report covers the previous financial year with the council composition as prior to the October 2023 elections with Mayor Cole, who departed council last October. The annual report covers progress against council strategic projects, and a major initiative throughout the financial year was consultation with the community on our strategic community plan, which has been reviewed and has been updated. An important element of that consultation and feedback was hearing from the community their strong desire and a long-standing desire to see the poles and wires undergrounded throughout the city of Vincent. And during the year, we developed and signed up with Western Power a whole of City of Vincent underground power program. And it was great to have Western Power at our community barbecue this afternoon, talking to residents about the timing and progress of that project. We also were engaged in a long running project following the Leederville structure plan around redevelopment of the two at-grade asphalt car parks in the Leederville town centre, and that process progressed, and council has approved the preferred proponent of the redevelopment, and those contracts have now been signed as per the council resolution. We continued to do upgrade and renewal works on Beatty Park, some of which are still ongoing in terms of the 30-metre outdoor pool. We continued to implement council's accessible cities strategy and had a big win in terms of our advocacy of securing state government and main roads approval to go from 50 kilometres per hour to 40 kilometres per hour in all local roads in the city of Vincent. We continue to progress the implementation of the Robinson Park Development Plan, and that's ongoing, and there'll be some works commencing shortly. We implemented key actions of the Banks Reserve Master Plan, which you can see if you're taking a walk down by the Swan River now, with a lovely picnic area complementing the major playground upgrade, which took place last year. We're continuing to finalise the details of a youth skate space in Mount Hawthorn that didn't progress according to the timing that we wished, but we are now proceeding with that. We also completed stage 1 of the Haynes Street Reserve Development Plan, and we've got a great little playground and park now for the residents in North Perth. Something which we weren't contemplating going into last financial year was the WA Football Commission needing a different venue to host the 2022 Waffle Grand Final. An international cricket game took precedence at Optus Stadium, and the Football Commission ran a EOI process for alternative hosts for the Waffle Grand Final, and the City of Vincent was successful in that. And we had a brilliant day next door at Leederville Oval with the town centre activated, businesses coming out onto the streets, and a huge amount of positive feedback from everyone who attended the grand final at Leederville Oval. And we also started preparation for hosting the FIFA Women's World Cup at HBF Park last year. And we continued to implement our small business friendly approvals program, which is focused on making it easier for our small businesses to do business and to get their approvals and other requirements from the City of Vincent. And we've seen some great progress in terms of how we present our information and how we deal with our relationships and support small businesses throughout the city. So they are the key highlights. A lot of those projects are still ongoing, and they are outlined in our corporate business plan, and we are currently reviewing those in preparation for this year's annual budget. The key focus will continue to be the underground power program, and there is now a great amount of information on the city's website in terms of the different project areas and frequently asked questions for residents wanting to know what underground power means for them and how we're approaching that. And we'll continue to provide further information on an ongoing basis on that project. Mesam, on that, probably the key highlights I'd like to mention, and I would pass over to our Chief Financial Officer to provide some summary highlights of the financial statements.
Thank you, David. The 2023 financial year was another strong year for the city as we continue to build our long-term financial sustainability, a consistent theme of our 2023-24 annual budget. Operating revenue for the city was $9 million higher than the prior year and $5 million higher when compared against the original adopted budget. The strong result was largely due to higher fees and charges, predominantly from BD Park, as attendance levels almost reached 1.2 million, representing an 18.6% increase on the prior year. Car parking revenue continued to be strong, and higher interest rates and cash balances contributed favorably to higher interest earnings for the city. With rising inflationary pressures and a very competitive labour market, the city was able to manage operational costs, which finished the year 5.5 million lower than the prior year and 1.4 million lower than the adopted budget. Lower waste costs contributed favourably to this result, with a 19% year-on-year reduction in waste to landfill after the rollout of FOGA in the prior year. When adjusted for the RRF exit payment of 7.1 million in 2022, operational costs were only 2.5% higher on the prior year, well below inflation levels. Overall, this contributed to a net result of 924,000 for the year, an increase of 2.3 million on the prior year. The city was able to strengthen its balance sheet during 2023 with an overall increase in net assets of 12.8 million. This was largely due to $6.4 million increase in cash from the prior year, resulting in an improvement to the city's liquidity position. A strong balance sheet and strong liquidity is essential for long-term financial sustainability and for the city to support longer payback periods for underground power and deliver the Leederville car park development project. We delivered just under $10 million worth of capital projects during 2023, with our continued focus on renewal over new to address our aging assets. The city invested 2.2 million in our roads and footpaths, 2.2 million at our parks and playgrounds, 1.7 million to our aging buildings, and 1.4 million at BD Park for various projects. Net cash flow from operating activities was also strong at 13.6 million for the year, an increase of 13.7 on the prior year. The OAG has issued the city with an unqualified audit report and a clean bill of health. Overall, there was a continued reduction in both the number of financial and IS audit findings, as evidenced by the continued improvement to the city's processes and internal control environment. The city will continue to look to improve and further strengthen our internal controls as the current internal audit program is rolled out over the coming years. So once again, another very strong year for the city to build on as we continue on our journey of long-term financial sustainability. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for those presentations. Would the mover like to make any comments? You're limited to 5 minutes, just like everybody else.
Thank you. I think the CEO and Reece have spoken adequately. It's always a pleasure to endorse the annual report. We've obviously seen it for a lot longer than the public, but it really is a testimony to the amazing work that the staff do at administration. So I guess just a word of appreciation to staff for the work that you do. And I hope that everyone kind of, whilst it may not be the most riveting reading, it does give a good sense of the scope of and complexity of the work that the city undertakes and the teams that underpin the work in our community.
Okay, Councillor Castle, as a seconder, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Ms. Simon. Yes, similarly echo those comments. I think that what really stands out in this particular annual report is the huge projects that we have ahead of us and the massive amount of work that's been done so far to prepare the city's administration and the public for the implementation of those. And I think the next annual report will be even more exciting a read. So I look forward to that. And yes, definitely echo that sentiment that of thanks to the administration for the work that you've done in this past year.
Okay, is there anyone else any other elector who's present here who would like to ask any questions or make any comments in relation to the annual report? Can I just say you don't need to say, no, it's okay. You don't, I'm just explaining for everybody here. You don't need to say who you are, Dudley. You don't need to say who you are. And also we will hear your voice in the live stream, but the camera won't pick you up. Okay, please.
I don't mind mentioning my name. It's Dudley Meyer of Highgate. So I'd like to comment on the financial aspects of the annual report. Last year, I raised something similar to this year. Last year, I pointed out that the audited carried forward surplus was $1 million higher than the figure the administration used when developing the 2022-23 budget. Effectively, last financial year, ratepayers paid $1 million more than we needed to. The $1 million was a net effect of a number of significant poor predictions by the staff. At another council forum, I think it was one of the meetings, I raised this, and one of the elected members suggested that it's hard to estimate the end of year figures when you're at the beginning of a financial year. I agree, but that wasn't the problem. The problem is that at budget time, which is in late June, the staff were predicting what the end of year figures would be, and that was a few days later. And they were getting it massively wrong. You'd expect any competent organisation to have a pretty good handle on the expected outcomes at the financial year, at the end of the financial year, especially when there's a direct impact on the amount of rates that you need to collect from your customers. And apparently this isn't the case in local government. The city's audit committee questioned the discrepancy, and the response provided by the staff was what I call the Pol Pot excuse. The staff listed a number of other local governments who'd done worse than Vincent, implying that Vincent did quite well. It's the poor Pol Pot excuse because it's like saying Vladimir Putin is a nice guy because Pol Pot killed a lot more people. There is a logical equivalence in there. You shouldn't be comparing yourself to the worst group. You should be comparing yourself to the best and trying to match them. Which brings me to this year's outcome. At the end of June, the staff said the carried forward surplus would be $4 million, or just over $4 million. So that's just a few days before the end of the financial year. The audited figures show that it's over $9 million, a discrepancy of $5 million. Now, I'm not saying that ratepayers were ripped off by $5 million this year. I couldn't be bothered working out that exact figure because I know there's some sort of late prepayment that affected the figures and distorted the totals. But it's when you look at the individual components that you start to ask yourself, how can I get it so wrong? Capital was, again, a prediction basket case. It wasn't alone. There were significant discrepancies in employee costs. How can you get that wrong 2 days before or 3 days before the end of the financial year? Material and contract costs, fees and charges in other areas were inaccurate. So my guess, and it's purely a guess, but I used to work in this sort of area, is that staff come up with a prediction at the beginning of the budget preparation process, but they don't revise it closer to budget time. It's either that, or they do revise it, but keep quiet because the change is going to result in less rates income. And that's what history has been showing us. Each time the ratepayers are copying it. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak or ask any questions? Or actually, sorry, before we do that, I should probably, do we need to respond to that or no? Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Does anyone else want to ask any questions or make any comments in relation to the annual report, including the financial reports? Okay. If there's no further speakers, we will move now on to general business. Thank you. So this is now an opportunity for people to table their motions. We have prepared a list to provide some information in response to queries raised ahead of the meeting, and hopefully we'll have some order and be able to move through the items efficiently. These have been listed in the order that they were received, as we did do a call out for motions in advance. So thanks to those of you who have sent those motions through ahead of the meeting. The copies of these are available. We'll be going through the motions in the order that they were received. So if you have not been to an AGM before, I'll run through how the process is going to work this evening. As I mentioned from the outset, my obligations as the presiding member is to keep order and to read aloud the motion so everyone's clear about what is being put to the vote. I'm then going to call for a mover and a seconder, and ordinarily the mover will be for the person who has put forward the motion, and the motion must be seconded for discussion to proceed. If it doesn't have a seconder, then the motion lapses and we will just be moving to the next motion. And again, a reminder that if you second a motion or move a motion, it doesn't mean that you necessarily support or object to the motion. It's just so that it can be discussed. If the motion is moved and seconded, then the mover is to come forward to the microphone and can speak and may speak to the motion, but they don't have to. After this, anyone else may come forward and speak on the motion, including the seconder. The mover of the motion will have a right of reply, and if there are no further speakers, then the mover can come forward and close the debate. So as a presiding member, I will then ask for a vote on the motion, and this is done by a simple show of hands. So each elector has one vote, and you don't have to vote if you don't want to. So I will first ask for a show of hands of all those in favour, then I'll be asking for a show of hands of all those who are against, and the motion will be decided based on a simple majority. So any motions that are passed this evening will then be tabled at a council meeting where council will then vote on how to proceed with the motions that have been raised. But even motions that have not been passed will be at least on the council agenda for our attention. So before we commence, we have also invited the community to attend this evening to ask any questions or simply give feedback. So if you don't wish to table a motion but wanted to ask a simple question or make comments, then these will be dealt with after the motions. So again, I remind people when you come to the microphone, you will now need to state your name and the suburb that you reside in for the purpose of the minutes, and you have a maximum of 5 minutes to speak. Okay, so let's go. Yeah, so doing that. Okay. Okay. So we've got motion number 1 that has been put forward by Marina Foster of North Perth. And the motion is that council provides lights and curbing in the laneway running from Howlett Street to Pennant Street. This laneway provides access to garages to residents on Pennant Street and Hardy Street. Okay, so do we have a mover for that motion? Okay, moved by Councillor Wolf. Do we have a seconder for that motion? As I say, it doesn't mean you have to be in agreement or otherwise. So, seconded by Councillor Hallett. Okay, so I'll hand over to the mover. You've got 5 minutes to speak to this motion.
Thank you very much, Ms. Amon. Marina unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, so she contacted me and asked if I could just read a short statement on her behalf. I noticed that her proposal has been split into 2 motions, so I'll just read the portion now of her statement that relates to motion 1. So Marina says, the new development at 33 Scarborough Beach Road, North Perth, consists of 6 stylish, well-designed townhouses, all of which require laneway access to their garages. Improvements to the amenity of this laneway, in the form of solar lights and curbing, will demonstrate council's sense of purpose to enhance Vincent's streetscapes and create an environment that is both attractive and safe for residents. This should encourage residents to take pride in their surroundings and eliminate the incidents of littering and vandalism that seems to be more prevalent in areas that appear to be neglected and uncared for. So that's the end of the part of her statement that relates to motion 1. Without getting into substantive discussion about the merits of Marina's motion, what I will add is that the upkeep and the safety of our laneways are important issues. Obviously, any consideration of this particular laneway that's discussed in this motion would need to be considered in the broader context of our future works plans and priorities. But nonetheless, I'm happy to move this motion so it can be considered further. Thank you.
Councillor Hallett, would you like to speak as the seconder?
Nothing to add.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this motion or speak on this motion? If you want to speak, just come up to the microphone. Again, please state your name and what suburb you reside in. Thank you.
Okay, Evelyn Coral in North Perth. Just there's lots of laneways in the city of Vincent. So would this set a precedent that other laneways that are subject to a bit of vandalism and all that also gets lighting that's got residential properties along it? That's all. It's just a query. So does that mean other laneways will be eligible for lighting as well? That's all.
Okay, manager.
Through the presiding member, the engineering team do condition surveys of all the laneways and are prioritised according to the condition ratings. So it would be some sort of engineering analysis and asset management science behind what laneway gets renewed at any what stage and what year that would be.
Does anyone else wish to speak to this motion? Okay, so would you like, the mover of the motion, would you like a right of reply or would you like to respond?
I've got nothing further to add on that. Thank you. I'll just probably reiterate my previous comment around consideration of this particular laneway being done in that broader context of future work planning and priorities. Nothing further. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Got 2 votes. Thank you. So I'm going to move on to motion 2, which again is from Marina Foster of North Perth. And the second motion is that council run a name the lane competition for schools in the North Perth postcode to name the laneways within the North Perth area. So do I have a mover for this motion? So that's moved Councillor Wolf. Do I have a seconder? Seconded Councillor Hallett. Okay, so the mover, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move on to the second part of Marina's statement, which dealt with motion 2. So Marina says that the naming of laneways could help to create links with the history of the district and provide a sense of belongingness for current and new residents. Council could be responsible for proposing a name the lane competition for schools in the district. Once again, I'll refrain from commenting on sort of the substantive merits behind that competition idea, but some broad comments that I will add to that is that the naming of our laneways, I think, is important for that sense of placemaking. I think Hamel Lane is a really wonderful example of how we've recently used the naming of laneways to create that link with history. And dare I say, with increasing reliance on deliveries, I think that there is a consideration there about ease of navigation of our neighbourhoods. But overall, I think my comment that I will add to Marina's statement now is that a future consideration for what our future long-term strategy is as the city around naming of laneways and communicating that to the community is worth further consideration. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm now going to put the motion. All those in favour, could you please raise your hand? 2. I am so sorry. I beg your pardon. Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? Hello, could you please say your name and your suburb? I'm so sorry.
No worries. Dudley Meyer of Highgate. I don't support this because we already have a process for naming the laneways. It was a very contentious argument years ago. We've got a process now that recognises Aboriginal history in the area. We have the local history section who gets a whole list of suitable names. So I think we've got a process, and I'd hate to see it cheapened in a way. I hate to say those words, cheapened by having just school kids involved. Certainly get them involved afterwards and explain the history, and so they get involved in that, but not have them pick the names. I think that's going too far. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? Oh, okay. I've actually given you the right of reply, sorry, before I actually had the debate, and I apologise for that. Okay, well, I'm actually going to put the motion now. So all those in favour? Okay. Against? Okay, so that motion has not been supported. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the next motion. And this motion has come from Maxine and Pat Callahan of Mount Hawthorn. And the motion is as such. Request that council take action to ameliorate the dust problem on the southern verge of Menzies Park. Okay, sorry. It's up on screen. Okay, so we've got that motion, and the rationale for that is up on the screen. There it is. Okay, so we've got that now. Now, do we have a mover for that motion? I'm happy to move the motion. Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Okay, we have a seconder. Do I actually say so? Dudley might. Okay. Okay. So, as the mover, I don't feel the need to speak to this motion. Because I will get an opportunity if it's supported and it comes to the council. Would the seconder like to speak to this motion? Okay. Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? Okay, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Okay, that motion has been carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so the next motion is from Marie Sloth of West Perth. There you are. And the motion is that council consider installing signage for a trial period throughout the Cleaver Street character precinct stating no entry, residents, businesses only. And again, the rationale has been put up on the screen. Now, do we have a mover for that motion? Okay, so we have a mover. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Okay, seconded by Councillor Greer. Okay, so would the mover like to come forward and speak to the motion?
Marie Sloth, West Car Street, West Perth, in the affected area. I just like rat running has been going on for a long time now, but it's increased greatly, and the number of vehicles that come down Florence Street, Car Street, and Cleaver Street, and Strathcona Street in the mornings. It's every other minute there's another vehicle racing down, and they ignore the 40-kilometre speed limits in Car Street and Florence Street, and that's 30 kilometres now, and Strathcona is now 30 as well. But they scream around the corner of Strathcona and Car Streets from either direction, and they don't slow down, they don't stop, they just come racing around. I've nearly been hit myself coming out of my street if I have to go up Car Street from my lane, which is Coleman Lane on Strathcona Street, to turn left or right, and nearly been hit. They're that close, there's someone coming. They don't even check, it's dangerous. So I'm just hoping that some action can be taken just for experiment to see if we can sort of somehow slow these drivers down, because someone's going to get very seriously injured very soon. And the West End Deli on the corner of Strathcona Street has little kids going sometimes to that in the morning with their parents. If anyone runs on the road, they're going to get hit. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm scared it will. So that's what I just like to hope people can do something to help us on that one. Thank you.
Councillor Greer, would you like to speak to the motion?
I will just briefly, and thank you for raising this motion. Just to note that there is a lot of concern in the local area about the impact of the Bunnings redevelopment and how it might change, particularly that aspect of West Perth. And I think it's important that council consider a range of options available to us to promote pedestrians, cyclists, and other kind of active use of the West Perth space as that change comes over the coming years.
Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? Okay, Mari, you have a right of reply, or do you feel that do you wish to speak further?
Bunnings is a separate issue.
Okay, in that case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Okay, that motion has been carried. Thank you. Okay, the next motion is also from Mari Slath of West Perth, and that is council request that Main Roads undertake a survey of the Thomas Street Bridge and surrounding intersection and identify measures for improving safety in the current environment and with consideration of future development, i.e. Bunnings. Do we have a mover for this motion? Okay, do we have a seconder? Great. Thank you. Seconded by Dudley Marr. Mari, would you like to come forward and speak to the motion, please?
Yes, in addressing this motion, because I live so close to the area and have for many years, but I also walk across the Thomas Street Bridge and all the surrounding streets. I've got a push scooter, which I still use as a vehicle, and I still drive. And at any time of the day, I can be using, usually 3 times a week, I'm in that area. First peak hour in the morning and evenings, you have to wait sometimes nearly half an hour to go from the bottom of Carr Street at Loftus Street to get just to the other side of Thomas Street Bridge. I haven't mentioned it in here, but I was going to say I think we need a second bridge there. And it needs to be done quickly, not in the next year or a survey done. It needs to be practically almost now. It's got to be that bad. And then with the actual, well, Bunnings is a bit further. I mentioned that later along the way. I just think the matter has been very late in being addressed because of the developments that are going to be going ahead. That includes Bunnings and also the new buildings, 7-storey buildings along the Newcastle Street to Charles Street. There's going to be 7-storey buildings, I think 7 of them, if that's right, and a hotel on that side of the street. So how these vehicles are going to move, I don't know. But there'll be just total congestion everywhere, and I can't see any way out of it unless the survey is done like fast. So that's my request on that one. Mm.
Okay, Dudley, a seconder, would you like to speak to the motion? Okay. Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? No one over there now, is there? Okay. Okay, so Mari, do you feel that you need to say anything further? Okay.
And that was
Just wait till you're near the microphone because the recording won't pick up your comments.
ambulances. No one's even thought about that, and fire trucks, because when this traffic is totally jammed in the mornings and peak hour and evenings, even during the day sometimes, these vehicles have great trouble getting through. But if the roads are blocked and the Thomas Street Bridge is already just at a standstill, are people going to die in the ambulances on the way to the hospitals of Charlie Gardner and Hollywood in that direction? Because I can't see how they're going to get through unless they build a bridge over the top of the bridge or some other way. So that's my suggestion there. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm now going to put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Okay, thank you very much. So I'm now going to move to the next motion, which is also by Mari, and that is that council undertake monitoring of Colvin Lane to measure number of heavy vehicles using this laneway, and that council consider installing additional 8 kilometres per hour speed signage along Colvin Lane. Okay, so do we have a mover for this motion? Okay, so that's moved. Mari, do we have a seconder? Seconded, Dudley Meyer. Thank you very much. Would the mover like to come and speak to this motion?
Yes, thank you. Colvin Lane, it's only 5 metres wide, just a little bit wider. And in the recent months, we've had heavy vehicles that are nearly 5 metres wide and long and heavy using this laneway to go to the West One College, which is at the end of the lane. This, just on a personal level, it affects my garage door, which I had recently improved a couple of years ago. It's making it go bang, bang, bang when it goes down more than it did. But that's just the damage from the vehicle. But we also have at least 60 cars a day using this laneway. And for me to get into the laneway myself, open the garage door, and I go always forward, and I have to go toot, so I can get into it in case some car is racing down. And they normally sit on about 25 kilometres an hour, even before they get to the corner, because they're in a hurry to get either come home from work, which is they come down, or in the morning they're going up the lane to go to work. And they're obviously running late. But so I haven't been hit yet. I've been told it's unfortunate I do live where I live because of this problem with the laneway. But I don't, at this stage, I'm just suggesting we now have more 8 kilometre an hour signs placed further and have a reminder, 8 kilometre an hour signs placed along the side of the laneway so that they remember they're not supposed to be racing at 25k. Council did check this several times for us to know this is the case. That they're supposed to be sitting on 8 kilometres an hour so there's no injury and no one gets hurt. And they've got time to slow down when they get to the corner of Strathcona Street and Colvin Lane. We have had council put several humps in the lane over the years to try and slow the vehicles down. But today that makes no difference. They're getting in a hurry, they're going to go. And so I just think because of this, if council could do something a little bit further and put the reminder signs up in appropriate places. The people who live on this laneway, whose garages are on this laneway, their houses front Car Street, so they really have no other way of getting out of the garages. So this is one of the reasons we do hope that one further step can be taken to try and monitor what's happening for us in Colvin Lane. Thanks.
Okay, would the seconder like to speak to this motion? Okay, is there anybody else who would like to speak to this motion? Okay, so the mover, do you feel that you have said all that you need to say? Okay. All right, so I'm now going to put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Okay, that motion is carried. So now we'll move on to the next motion. This is also from Mari, and that is that council request. Oh no, I just did a sec. I know it's the same. Yeah, it is that one. That council requests the Department of Transport undertake a survey of the Thomas Street Bridge and surrounding intersections and impact of current traffic volumes on public transport routes in the current environment and with consideration of future development. So do I have a mover for this motion? Okay. Do I have a seconder? That's moved Murray. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Seconder Dudley Meyer, thank you. Would the mover like to speak to this motion?
Yes, I basically brought this one up again because of the Bunnings development and how it will impact with 300 car park in the building as well on the rest of the area, because I just don't know how it's going to anyone's going to move in their cars. I just honestly, it's getting really bad every day, if not worse. And so if something can be done by council to put heavy hand on the Department of Transport and Main Roads to get that to be done fast. I know it sounds impossible, but to ask if that can be done. Thank you.
Would the seconder like to speak to this motion? Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak to this motion? Okay, Mara, do you have anything further that you wish to say about this motion? Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Okay, that motion is carried. Thank you. And so we get on to the next motion, which has also been proposed by Mari, and it is that council ensure ratepayer residents of Cleaver Precinct character area streets be informed of what action to take in event of Bunnings, should it go ahead, having its timber and or delivery vehicles utilise any of these streets. So do I have a mover for that? Okay, let's move Murray. Do I have a seconder? Seconder Dudley Meyer, thank you. Would you like to speak to this motion?
Yes, I really think I'm going to do this myself as well. I think I do letterbox drop the people living in Cleaver character area, just so they know what will need to be done if Bunnings do ignore their condition that they don't let this happen. And it most likely could happen quite easily if they not aware of it. So I'm just wondering, rather than me doing all this letterbox dropping, which I've done sometimes in the past to let people know what they need to do, if council could advise ratepayers on steps they can take if they do happen to sight or even take a photograph of some of the Bunnings vehicles using our streets. And the reason I'm so concerned about this, and when I went to that meeting, I explained that it took 14 years for us to finally get this Cleaver precinct Carrick area sort of established and recognised. And it's just to save a bit of our history, basically, and show what homes we used to have in the area. There's still quite a few good ones left. And so that we don't want Bunnings trucks going up and down the streets and, it's not timber dropping off and on, but you know what I mean? It's sort of going to have a big impact on everyone's life in that area. So that's what I'm requesting council do, if it's possible, to let the ratepayers there know what steps they can take. And that could be, again, ringing Bunnings, ringing council itself, and or taking photographs to say this is what's going on. Thank you.
Okay, would the seconder like to speak to this motion? Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this motion? Okay, to the mover, do you wish to say anything further? Okay, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That motion is carried. Okay. So the next motion is from John Visker of North Perth. And the motion is the City of Vincent set up a working party immediately consisting of representation from the Heritage Council of WA, Manager of Parks, Hyde Park Foreman, a qualified arboriculturalist and community member with horticultural and heritage experience. Due to the impact the pest will have on the state's and nation's tree populations, the city seeks special funding from the state and federal governments. Okay, do I have a mover for that motion? That's moved John Visker. Do I have a seconder? Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, seconded by Murray. Thank you. Would the mover like to speak to this motion?
Thank you. John Visker, 148 Chelmsford Road, North Perth. With the devastating news that was announced on the 30th of January on the impact that the polyphagous shot-hole borer will have on the fabric of Hyde Park, that's why I'm put this motion forward. Historically, Hyde Park is unique. It's on the state register for heritage places. Many of the councils have heard me stand and talk about Hyde Park as such. This is devastating. It's not only going to affect the trees. The figures are 20% of the trees are going to disappear. That's like 100, 180 trees. Okay. That's going to be a huge cost to take them out. And the research is still being done on what species are susceptible and ones that are resistant to it. My motion is we really need to get together a group of people, a working party, so it can be discussed. Because it's on the state register, Heritage Council has to be involved because of the constraints as such. The manager of the parks, the person here, even the foreman of Hyde Park, who would have intimate knowledge of how that park runs, and an arboriculturist and also someone with horticultural and heritage experience from the community. So they can discuss how you are going to tell the community about it through public lectures, through educational programs. And it's not only the park that's going to be affected, residential gardens as well. There's going to be a huge loss of trees in the park, and there'll be some replanting scheme. But that has to be done within the what would you call it? The original idea of Hyde Park. It was set out in the late 1890s with the whole ethos of this gardenesque approach to landscaping. If you've read my conservation plan on Hyde Park done 2023, there's a whole statement of what the gardenesque approach is. Our recent book called Historic Gardens of Perth features 5 pages on Hyde Park and talks about the gardenesque approach to landscaping. Those things have to be taken into consideration when the council then thinks about what are we going to do. It can also use it as a positive thing. If you go back to some of the historical aspects of the park, configuration of paths and things have been lost due to trees getting big. So some features can be reinstated. So it's not all bad. And the gardenesque approach was a variety of plants allowed to grow naturally, not cut into square boxes and shrubs, which you see down there at Hyde Park. And that's the whole landscaping ethos that really needs to be recognised. Hence, you need to have Heritage Council, people with horticultural heritage experience really to discuss this problem. And I do urge the council to seek funding from the state government and federal. It's going to be millions of dollars just to take the trees out. And then that. So thank you very much. And I do hope that something happens from it.
Thank you very much. And would the seconder like to speak to this motion?
I'd just like to say I support John because he knows much more than I do about the whole story about this. But I have read already in the paper the damage these borers can do to these trees are already doing, and also the impact on the whole of Hyde Park and everyone who goes there. Thank you.
Okay, would anybody else like to speak on this motion? Oh, sorry. Okay, we have a quick response from Director.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Just to make a clarification, obviously this issue is evolving quite rapidly. Just like to make a point that the response is headed from a federal then through to a state level with local government participating. The cost of removal is currently not at the local government level. The cost of removal is currently at a federal, essentially a federally funded level. The cost of any rehabilitation to the site will likely be borne by the city. And also just making a note that we are actively looking at ability to access funds towards that rehabilitation at the moment.
Would anyone else like to speak on this motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Luke Wallage of Wolseley Street in North Perth. We live about 800 metres up from Hyde Park. And one of the reasons that we bought our house was precisely because it was so close to Hyde Park, and we love the area, and I love your passion for it. I will say, while I share your passion for Hyde Park, I don't quite share your passion for committees. This seems to be an issue, as best I've followed it, that requires a timely response, requires as the officers said, federal, state, and local, driven from the federal angle, but all of those tiers of government working together. I'm quite prepared to trust that the matter is in hand with subject matter experts. I would be very keen to see as much information provided to the community, but again, I have faith in our mayor and in our councillors who act, as it were, as a committee on matters like this. So while I share your passion and share your concern for Hyde Park, I think the setup of one more committee, which will just add work to those people trying to respond to this matter in a timely way, is perhaps not the way that I would pursue the matter. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? Or just you. You get a right of reply, but first I'm going to see, but I'm just going to see whether anyone else wishes to speak to this motion first. Does anyone else wish to speak to this motion? Okay, would the mover like, oh, yes, oh, sorry. By explanation, the only people who can speak are people who are recognised, who are residents. Okay, so, all right, would the mover like to respond?
I just want to say that many years ago, there was a group called Patrons of Hyde Park, and it was between community members and the technical staff of Vincent here, it was the town of Vincent. And it was a very good conduit because information was passed to that group, and there was also that group making suggestions. So my model, if you like, is really something like that. So there is an expert group, and it's getting relayed back to the community in that way. Because the most important part now is telling the community how it's going to affect it and what the council is doing about it. And you need to have some public forums, even if you have some lectures at the local history, or experts from the agricultural department, really showing what the major effect is going to happen. And what appeared on TV the other night was probably the first time that we saw visual aspects of the destruction of the trees themselves. So the residents of Vincent as well really need to be shown that, and so they can see how severe it is. And whichever way you do it, I think it's important to have a group that at least can talk about it and a strategy as such. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Okay, that motion is carried. Thank you very much. So the next motion is from Dudley Meyer from Highgate. But I'm noting that there has been a motion that is on the papers that has been withdrawn. Okay. So this motion is that this meeting, that one was late. Sorry. Sorry, just talking about process. Okay, sorry about that. I'm just going to, I'll just read out the motion. So the first motion is that this meeting, 1, notes that a request to provide an ongoing and convenient method for the community to dispose of e-waste was successfully passed at the 2023 AGM. 2, notes that the administration did not support this motion. 3, thanks the council for dismissing the administration's rejection of the motion and for requesting that the administration undertake a 6-month trial of e-waste drop-off points. 4, notes that the first drop-off day in July 2023 was highly successful and demonstrated that the community is prepared to dispose of e-waste in a responsible manner. 5, congratulates the administration for enthusiastically promoting the second e-waste drop-off day to be held on 3rd of February 2024. And 6, requests that the city adopt a simple, ongoing system whereby community members can drop off e-waste when it suits them rather than having to stockpile the waste on the off chance that the city holds another e-waste drop-off day. Okay, so do I have a mover for that motion? So that's moved Dudley Meyer and seconded by John. Well, a few people seconding. Okay, would the mover like to come forward and speak to the motion, please?
Thank you, Dudley Meyer of Highgate. We've got a number of new councillors, so I just want to make something clear. The current initiative involving e-waste was an initiative that came from the community, not from the administration. There was a motion last year, it was a simple motion. It just said that the city provides e-waste drop-off facilities in places that are convenient to city ratepayers. The idea is that there'll be a few convenient places like the library or BD Park where there's staff a lot of times in the week where people could just drop off the waste as it builds up. The administration didn't support this motion. And what they suggested was that firstly, we could use the Verge Valet service. So they're saying that if I've got a computer screen or something electrical that I can't repair, and I always try to repair it, I should put it on the Verge and the city pays $200 a pop. I don't pay, the city pays, or ratepayers pay $200 a pop. It's not smart. Next suggestion was that we drive to Tamala Park or Balcatta Depot. So that's a long drive, and especially when a lot of people in the city, me for example, don't have cars. I think Vincent has a higher proportion of households without cars. So driving all that way is just not practical. The third suggestion was that we could go to Officeworks, which raises the question, if they can do it, why can't the city? At a subsequent meeting, the staff said there wasn't space at the library or BD Park. All it takes is a couple of wheelie bins. As the bins get filled, you call someone to the ute, they take it away, and you put a new bin there. It doesn't need a lot of space. And if the bins are filled quickly, it just demonstrates that people want to have a service like that. They also said that e-waste was a target for scavengers, and that was some sort of negative. That's actually a good thing. If people are going through the e-waste and being able to extract stuff and reuse it, that's a good thing. In fact, if you had a system, you would actually collect the e-waste and say, first Saturday on the month, it's Scavengers Day. Come and get what you want, rather than pass it on. So scavengers are a good thing. Should be encouraged. Thanks to an amendment proposed by Councillor Alexander at the March meeting, Council asked for a 6-month trial of drop-off points and asked for a report that goes to Council at the end of that trial. But rather than implement what the Council asked for, the staff simply implemented a drop-off day, which was convenient for the staff, but not necessarily convenient for the community. We had to make the effort. The first drop-off day last July was a real success, and that clearly demonstrated the community wants to dispose of e-waste in a responsible manner. We want to do the right thing. There were 11 tonnes collected on that day, but you have to think how much went into red bins in the intervening periods before we were informed that there was that drop-off day. People will do what's convenient for them. In 2018, the council set a target of zero waste to landfill by 2028. So it's been 5 years. We're halfway through that process. And I've yet to see a significant improvement initiated by the city. The 3-bin system was imposed by the state government at a cost of $1 million to ratepayers. The Verge Valet system comes from the western suburbs. That wasn't anything new in Vincent. The only initiative that's come from the staff is the cessation of collecting commercial waste. And that's a decision that will guarantee that we won't meet zero waste to landfill by 2028, unless you no longer count businesses and not-for-profits as members of the community. You've lost control of that waste stream, so it's not going to go zero to landfill. And I think some ways we've gone backwards. We can no longer put soft plastic, aerosol cans, meat trays, polystyrene and coffee cups into the recycling. So I don't think we've made a great deal of progress in the last 5 years. One thing I want to do is congratulate the staff for the promotion of this Saturday's e-waste drop-off. I think it is one of the best promotions I've seen. To get a card in my letterbox, I'm assuming everyone got the card, not just me. I think it's one of the best, and it should be a model that you base future promotions on. I think it's really good. So all I'm asking is you make it easy. Put some bins in the library or BD Park where there is some supervision, and make it easy for people. Basically, we just want an easy system. We don't want to be told what to do. I think we basically are doing the right thing if it's easy enough for us. Thank you.
Okay, would the seconder like to speak to this motion? Sorry, and just to explain, just because you're just behind, I can't see if you're indicating yes or no.
Is that better?
Yeah, no, that's fine. You're fine standing out, yeah.
Okay. Just the point there about having to stockpile rather than having a regular time, that's very important, because I know some of the other waste, that plastic and you name it, you end up with so much because you're waiting for a certain time. So I just think as it was suggested, that as a regular place that we can drop it off, as opposed to, yeah, so I'm just supporting that. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to, firstly, are there any responses that are required to this motion? Okay, would anyone else like to speak to this motion? Okay, would the mover like to respond further? Okay, all those in favour? I'm putting the motion. Against? That motion is carried. Okay, so the next motion is again, sorry.
I prefer not to move the next motion to speed things along. So the next motion about underground power, I'll scrap it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that motion has been withdrawn. So I just want to confirm this with the person who has proposed the motion so that you're happy to go with publishing policy related guidelines. Okay. All right. So the next motion has been presented by Dudley Meyer of Highgate, and it is that this meeting notes that a number of the city's policies have or did have associated guidelines which provide guidance to the staff on how to interpret and administer the policy, e.g. the street tree policy. Notes that in the past, these guidelines were approved by the council and were in the public domain so that community members had some visibility and understanding of how the policies were being implemented. 3, notes that having the council approve every change to the guidelines may not be the most efficient way of making sure that they reflect changing circumstances. 4, notes that in recent years, the administration has recommended removing these guidelines, arguing that they are purely administrative in nature. And 5, requests that all of these guidelines be included on the city's website in association with the relevant policy so that the community can better understand how policies are interpreted by the administration and so that they can be sure that the administration are implementing the policy or guideline in a consistent and open manner. So do we have a mover for that proposal? That's moved, Dudley Meyer. Do we have a seconder? Okay, sorry, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. I'm sorry, seconded. I need your name. Oh, you're Linda, hello. Sorry, Linda Quinn from Leaderville. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so over to the mover.
Dudley Meyer of Highgate. So there's been a gradual move in recent years to move various guidelines from the public domain. Vincent claims to be open and transparent and accountable, yet in reality, that's changing. We're not seeing as much of the going on, the internals, as we used to. The danger is that you'll end up with policies that are vague. They'll have noble intentions, but they give little detail as to how they will be implemented. And the devil is in that detail. I accept that there may be inefficiencies in the framework where minor changes have to come to council. That doesn't seem a smart move. And in a way, it's a bit like the way state legislation operates. You have acts that go to Parliament and regulations that are approved by the ministers. The difference, so the acts are equivalent to the policies and the regulations equivalent to the guidelines in my model. The difference with the way that Vincent operates compared to Parliament is that the regulations are in the public domain. Anybody can see what the regulations are, which gives you some certainty as to what the rules are and how they're applied, and it gives some certainty that they're applied in a consistent and open manner. And the key words are open and consistent. So what Vincent is setting up is a situation where a manager can make changes to the guidelines. I'm not saying it's a malevolent change, but they can make changes to the guidelines or interpret them the way they like, and nobody is the wiser. I've seen instances where staff have changed things in the guidelines without any visibility to council or the community. I just hear this from staff themselves saying, oh, we don't do this anymore, where the guidelines actually make it quite clear they should be doing it. So there's no cost in putting the guidelines on the internet rather than the intranet. The community will have some certainty. It'll keep the staff on the straight and narrow because they'll know that the community is aware of what is supposed to happen. So I don't think it's a big, difficult proposition, but it will keep us more informed. Thank you.
Okay, would the seconder like to speak to this motion? Okay. Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? Don't want to respond. Okay. Right, so would the mover like to respond further? Okay. So all those in favour? Against? That motion is carried. Okay, so the next motion is from Dudley Meyer in Highgate, and the motion is that this meeting requests that the city either upgrades the footpaths in the Mount Lawley Highgate Town Centre and or commits to pressure clean those footpaths at a frequency that maintains them in a clean and attractive state. Do I have a mover for that proposal? Move Dudley Meyer. Do I have a seconder? Seconded Linda Quinn. Thank you. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, recently I've been walking up and down Beaufort Street more than normal, and I always get the feeling I'm walking down some alleyway in some third world town. All that's missing is the smell of rotting food. The footpaths are filthy and grotty. There's years of caked on grime, vomit, and occasionally other things that are worse. Every now and then there's some work done, the footpath is repaired and the pavers are flipped over. So you get these patches, checkerboard patches of clean stuff compared to the really grotty stuff. Now, I feel sorry for the businesses. They're trying to present a clean and inviting environment, but it's pretty grotty. They're probably relying on the fact that a lot of the customers come at night when they can't actually see the footpath. So previously the city did set up a town centre cleaning team. This is years and years ago. And they've also claimed that the footpaths are regularly pressure cleaned, but I don't see it. I think it's a failure in both cases. So the issue becomes, how do you fund it? And this is not going to be popular, but Beaufort Street supposedly has a dedicated placemaker. I don't know what they do, and I haven't seen any significant in the strip in the last few years. I've lived in the area for 40 years and nothing's changed in the last 10 years. In fact, I've seen some impractical ideas that come from placemakers that would have just damaged the already struggling businesses. The position was recently advertised, and I think the applications closed yesterday. And I suggest the best way of funding the ongoing revamp of the footpaths is to simply not appoint anyone to position and use the money instead on actually making visible improvements to the infrastructure. I don't go to Mount Hawthorn or Leadville very much, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's the same, where it looks grotty. If you go to the city of Perth, the standard is much higher. I spent a lot of time in Europe recently. The standard is much higher. You've got to zhuzh up the place for the businesses and make it more attractive. Thank you.
Okay, would the seconder like to speak? Okay, is there anyone who would like to speak or to respond?
I'd just like to add.
You always just remember to say who you are for the purpose.
John Visca, Chelmsford Road, North Perth. Okay. I'd just like to add, please look beyond Beaufort Street. Fitzgerald Street has had graffiti on the footpath for years. So it needs to be a broader issue as such. Bricks have been lifted up by tree roots on Fitzgerald Street. So I think it looks beyond Beaufort Street. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this proposal? Yes.
Murray Slythe, Car Street, West Perth. I'd just like to say that I've got a push scooter now if people it's parked over there. But when I ride along the footpaths, even in parts of Car Street, the paving's so uneven that you go clomp, clomp, and you can't, if you don't always see it, you're going to go over. Haven't done that yet. But a couple of times you're not supposed to ride on the road, but I have, because it's easier for me to be sure I can see what's on the road, it's smooth, whereas the footpaths are quite dangerous and bumpy. And also some of the nuts from the trees fall on the footpath. And, you know, if you skid on those, you've had it. So, yeah, that's good.
Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? Okay, would the mover like to respond? Okay, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That motion is carried. Okay, so the next motion is from Dudley Meyer in Highgate, and it is that this meeting requests that the city's code of conduct for elected members be amended to include a requirement for elected members to respond to members of the community in a reasonable timeframe, similar to the timeframes that were in the code of conduct prior to December 2017. Do I have a mover for this motion? That's moved Dudley Meyer. Do I have a seconder? That's seconded Linda Quinn. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Dudley Meyer Highgate. So prior to December 2017, the Code of Conduct had a requirement that elected members had to respond to communities within a defined timeframe. The section was dealing with communications, and it basically said you had to respond within 48 hours of receiving a telephone call or 5 days of receiving written inquiries. This requirement was dropped by council in December 2017 in, I don't want to be defamatory, so I'll just say in a most disappointing way. The change was not mentioned at all. The document was not advertised for community comment. The only way I found out about it was because people, including a former councillor, said to me, the councillors are no longer responding. And I said, no, the policy says you have to. So I went to the Code of Conduct and it had gone, and I worked out why. So in recent years, I've heard a number of complaints that most councillors no longer respond. That's not saying everyone. Someone today was praising former councillor Susan Gontashevsky. I know people have praised Councillor Alexander and others for responding to everything. But a lot of councillors, they're maintaining radio silence. In the recent council elections, 2 candidates recognised this and committed to respond to the community. They wouldn't have had to commit if it was the norm. So I've moved this before without much success. The response that the staff gave really came from a script from Utopia or Yes Minister. It was, I can't even remember it, but it was laughable. So I've moved it before, and I'm just interested to see if the new council, new faces, are prepared to change so there is a benchmark and the community can expect councillors responding. Thank you.
Would the seconder like to speak to this? Okay. Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? Okay, so would the mover like to say anything further? Okay, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Okay, that motion is carried. Thank you. The final motion that I've received from Dudley Meyer is that this meeting requests that the city undertake an independent organisation review to determine if the organisational structure, including staffing levels, is fit for purpose for a local government of Vincent's size, and which compares performance against best practice in private industry, local governments of a similar size, as well as the public service in general. Okay, so do I have a mover for this proposal? Okay, that's moved Dudley Meyer. Do I have a seconder? That's seconded Linda Quinn. Would the mover like to speak to the proposal?
Thank you. Some 20 years ago in 2003, the city contracted an external organisation to carry out an independent organisation review. At that stage, it cost about $80,000. I don't know what triggered it, and I think it was controversial at the time, but the terms of reference appeared far-ranging. A further internal review was done in 2009. That's because council amalgamations were happening, and the CEO wisely thought we might make sure that we're efficient and streamlined. So he did an very effective internal review. The impression I have that over the last 10 years, much effort has been made in improving the processes and the structure, but I don't think this has been reflected in the outcomes for the community. I would change, this may offend some people, but I'd characterise it as a change from the organisation that was focused on trying to do the best for the community with available resources to one where the focus is on the administration, making it easier for the staff. It's an organisation driven by bureaucratic processes rather than commercial realities in some cases. I know people will see that as harsh and will totally disagree, but it's just my impression, and it's not personal. I have no beef. In fact, I like a lot of the staff here, the senior staff. I think they're doing a good job in the circumstances. The feedback I've received from some staff members, both directly and indirectly, and it's mostly indirectly, is that some of the staff have given up caring. People are saying they've never been so respected in their work life, that the staff are the last to be considered. This is the lower staff, that the management's poor. And then the rolling eyes, they say, you wouldn't believe what goes on here. Again, some of this is secondhand, so I can't say it's true or not. I recently spoke to a person who works in local government and is familiar with Vincent. They work in a tier 1 local government. Their assessment was that Vincent had a structure that suited a large local government and not a smallish one like Vincent. We might be called a city, but we are really just a big town. I know that there is regular benchmarking, but I suspect it's superficial to some extent. You put some figures in a questionnaire and it pops out as an answer. And the thing is, you're benchmarking against other local governments, which I think is setting the benchmark too low. Benchmarking in some respects should be against commercial enterprises when it's possible. And I'm not saying it's about making a profit. It's about working efficiently and returning something to your shareholders or your customers. I don't think the council has the skill set to undertake a review, and I wouldn't expect them to. That's not what we vote for you for. This should be done by an outsider with exposure to a private enterprise as well as local government. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Would the seconder like to speak? Okay, is there anyone else who would like to speak to this motion? Okay, so would the mover like to say anything further? Okay, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Okay, that motion is carried. Thank you. So I don't have any more motions which have been submitted ahead of time, and I really do want to thank people for doing that. Are there any further motions to be presented to the meeting? Okay. All right. So a number of people, we moved to questions, yes?
Yes, just.
Yeah. So a number of people have already submitted questions, and I know that administration has given a response as well. But this is a time for you to also ask any other questions. Are there any questions that people would like to ask at this meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Just please come forward and make sure you say your name and the suburb that you reside in.
Right. Testing 1, 2. Yeah. Okay. My name's John Westergaard, Matlock Street, Mount Hawthorn. I live adjacent to the primary school. I have endeavoured to put forward a request to purchase some crown land right next to my home. I had the approval to erect a double garage adjacent to the old house with an office space above it. But it appeared to me that with the adjacent piece of ground joining my property, I could actually build a retirement home for myself or anybody else. And the big home I live in, I can let go to some young family. It's my wife and I living in a big 4x2 double ground. It's 320 square meters big. Got nowhere. Try to contact the CEO. Appears the paperwork gets pushed around. Bureaucracy. Where was it? Pension was. Okay. I've tried for 12 years to get this done, dealing with the West Australian Lands Administration initially, and it's been fed down over the years. I'm now 68, pushing the 70 mark. I've really tried to get this through and had no go. The road closure, it is closed. It's been closed for 25 years, Matlock Street, or Woodstock actually. And the tree line, you want visualize on the streets now, I believe. That's the new mantra. Boots on the ground to visualize the school kids coming back and forth is the way to go. It's a vacant piece of land standing there doing nothing. I've looked after it for 30 years. Yeah, bureaucracy. Funny thing, isn't it? Anyway, there you go. That's my point that I'd like to put forward. I'd like to pursue that. I believe I've got to do this through legal. Mrs. Wong. Is that correct?
Sorry, we're not in a position to give legal advice here at this meeting.
I'm not asking for legal advice, but just the chain of command, where the buck stops.
Okay, so we can now put the question to the administration
Okay.
to answer that.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Zaman, we are aware of that application, and I thought you had received a written response, but you would like that to be reviewed.
I will pursue it now to be asked to be reviewed again. But yes, it's good to know that you've actually received it and witnessed it, because I did request a meeting directly with you, subject to Mr. Carey giving me advice saying who to see about this matter, because it appears to me, wouldn't the council want the money? you know, it's a piece of land that stands there. It's derelict. It's not being used at all. The road's been closed for 25 years. They'll never rebuild it unless there's some underlying cause that I miss out and don't understand. But that's my beef for what it's worth. But it's been shoved around and moved around for, as I said, 12 odd years now. And also I'd like to back up this gentleman's comments about the suburb. It appears to me that the services have really declined over the years. I think it's got bigger than Ben-Hur, the whole area for the city to address. I cannot put my finger on it elsewhere. I mean, street lighting, for instance, we had somebody talk about street lighting. That's prevalent. It's there's a lot of attention that needs to be done in the area. It's an old area. It's done very well. Thank you very much. But yeah, there are other things, but I'd like to see how it's channeled, how it actually works. You know, it appears to me, and I've worked in corporate businesses before, and I've seen how things get shoveled around, sitting at meetings, and the finger moves around like this at everybody. Who's it going to point to next? Very interesting. But there you go. My input for what it's worth. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Does anyone else have any other questions for the meeting?
I've Sareed from Bower Street, Perth. I've recently received a correspondence from the council saying that the verge clearance has become our responsibility, which has been all along the responsibility of Winston Council. I just want to know, how has it become so sudden, our responsibility, and what actually, was the cause of it?
Okay, would you like to respond?
Through Mayor Zaman, I think we'd need the specific property address, and we just need to follow up that specific circumstance.
Well, I'm the administrator of my mum's estate. Her property is at 127 Bower Street, which is corner of Baker Avenue and Bower Street. And we have actually never been consulted or never sought permission from when the other energy company, telecom, and all littered the verge with all their metal boxes and all sorts of things. And all of a sudden, the maintenance has become our responsibility without anybody seeking our permission in the past of doing anything to it.
Through Mayor Zaman, we can follow up directly with you on the utility usage of that verge.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Although I might make the comment, so it sounds as though, I just want to be clear. So the concern you're raising is that it appears as though you have no rights when it comes to decisions that are made as to the usage by utilities on your verge, but you have all the responsibility when it comes to maintenance. Is
That's
that
correct.
okay?
Yes.
Thank you. I thought I should just articulate that, and I just want to clarify as well. You have got an individual matter that you have raised with the council, and
I have written in, and I
Good.
was told that the council is actually too busy taking care of other, responsibilities. I think this is a priority because it's a hazard in summer when the grass grows and not cleared completely. So it's a fire hazard. And all this time, we have been in the area for 45 years. We paid rates for 45 years. So how come it's all of a sudden become our responsibility?
okay.
Thank you.
So yeah, sorry. I hope you didn't mind me paraphrasing.
No,
I
that's
just
fine.
wanted to make sure that that concern wasn't being lost. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the floor? Okay. If there are no more questions, and there's no further motions at all, I want to thank everyone for their attendance, for coming along, and for showing an interest, particularly in what happens with local government. Hello. So I'm really pleased that you're here. Thank you so much. And also thank those people on the live stream, including Councillor Warner, who has been here the whole time listening in, but for good reasons that people can probably imagine. Is not able to attend in person with us at the moment. I hope you get well soon, Susie. So I thank everyone and I close the meeting at 8:29. Thank you.